Well, here we are, Bill. This is the first episode of hopefully a long and fruitful podcast. We're going to call the podcast Clocking In, which I thought was a bit apt.
Pertinent, yeah.
So what we've got to do now is sit down, go back over your life story, in and out the yards, make sure that we capture everything, because a lot of people will know you for 40, 45 years ago. Yeah. We've got a lot of new guys in the yard that don't know you.
Well.
And obviously there's a few older guys that don't want to know you for previous times.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start off just going through everything. But first of all, I'd like to thank Ian McConaughey at Willow Fens, who sponsored this event. So hopefully what we'll try to do is get local businesses to get involved. We'll get them a wee shout out here. Rather than go to the members on the Facebook page, as you know.
With you.
We're on the Facebook page, it's got over 12,000 people on it. So hopefully... Once we get to the end of this, we're still alive and we don't get sued with anybody, Bill. So we'll start off. Everybody here is Bill Gallagher. So let's start where it all began. Where did you?
Well, Ralph, I was born in East Belfast in the shadow of the Horn and Wolf shipyard in 1946. My father was a foreman electrician in Horn and Wolf at a time when they employed 30,000 people.
Jeez, oh.
He worked all his life on warships and would go on sea trials with them during the war as a non-combatant, in the event that he'd be taken prisoner of war. So he inspired me to think more favourably of a career in shipbuilding. And it was no surprise that I got a student apprenticeship with Horn and Wolf.
When was this? Was this the 60s, 70s?
In 60s, Ralph. So I started my apprenticeship in 1964, and it was a 5-year apprenticeship at the time. So I spent the first 3 years in various drawing offices,
right,
and also production departments. Things went well, but I was transferred for the first time in the company's sort of history, to ship repair from shipbuilding. And I continued in ship repair for 2 years.
I take it the drawing offices back then that weren't these technicals what they are now. I take it just be pens and pencils and straight edges.
That's correct. And flat benches and,
to keep you going on.
Yeah. But I didn't want to finish my career as a draftsman, if you know what I mean.
The town removed, they did a lot of work then. I mean, I know you said they had 30,000 people, so there must have been a colossal amount of orders.
Well, the 30,000 was before my time.
Right.
Probably when I started in the 60s, there'd have been certainly be 12,000
Still a big number.
But a lot of people. So, as I say, I worked in ship repair the last couple of years, and it worked. I fitted it, and it fitted me, and I was made a manager when I was 23.
Big step.
Yeah, well, it was actually in Horn and Wolf, that was unusual, but it worked for me. I continued in ship repair for a couple of years, and then was asked to transfer to shipbuilding. Eric Mackey.
Oh, that good name,
asked me to come across and work on a couple of bulk carriers in one of the East Yard, one of 3 yards within the 300-acre site. I did so, and things went very well. I got on well with Eric, but the first job I'd had in ship repair was the conversion of a Royal Navy submarine replenishment ship, and the senior managers in ship repair didn't want it, but I took it. It was to convert the ship to a prison for Republican paramilitaries.
And we were going to keep us in the water, obviously.
In the water, floating.
Did it come to fruition? Did they use it?
Yeah. I was assigned the manager to that contract for the life. And instead, there was, before they built Long Cache on land, I worked for a couple of, those couple of years. How many would that hold? I think it was about 800. They had various decks there. One for People Republic or People Democracy, one for the official IRA
Yeah.
and one for the provisional IRA.
Dearie me.
So it was, but they weren't good times, Ralph.
No, no.
And, you know, meanwhile, my wife and I had
So
always...
why wouldn't people take it? Was it the... Was
Well,
a fear of backlash or
well,
something?
the older people would have had families,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and were obviously a bit fearful of it.
Oh, of course.
So was I, but I just kept, you know, just did it. But, you know, afterwards, you know, though I continued in ship repair, transferred to shipbuilding, my wife and I had made our minds up to immigrate.
Yeah.
Once our first son came along, you know, because there were very troubled times, and we didn't want to bring our family up in that environment. So I luckily was offered a job in South Africa in Durban as the manager of the shipbuilding and structural divisions of James Brown and Hamer Limited in Durban.
Yeah.
They were an engineering subsidiary of a major mining house, Anglo Val, in South Africa. And so we went out there and enjoyed the time there. But what I noticed, when I went there was a parcel of very highly skilled guys with Scots accents.
I was going to say, you got a lot of accents. There's a lot of expats in there, yeah.
And a few with Belfast accents. And it, you know, so I was, you know, really pleased to find myself in that kind of company where, you know, I was still young and would need to turn to people to, you know, for help.
I thought South Africa would be more for mining than shipping. I didn't
Well,
think
it was, Ralph, but while I was there, we built the most powerful salvage tug in the world in its time, the John Ross, 150-ton bollard pull. We did a bollard pull test at Saldanha Bay.
Right.
Almost pulled the jetty down. You know, that was an oil or an ore terminal exporting from South Africa. So enjoyed South Africa, and then I got a phone call one day, and it was from Eric Mackey, and Eric said, "How would you like me to be your new managing director?" I didn't know the old one had been given the book. So Eric came, and we worked for a few years together. But he was given a job by British Shipbuilders to run all of the ship repair yards in the United Kingdom. So he came back, and sometime later, you know, we got back together. He offered me the job of managing director of a ship repair company in the south of England.
Okay.
So we were coming, but we came back, you know, the wife and our both our sons had been born by that time. And, but it was a bit of a shock to me when he said, by the way, I'd prefer you not to go down south of England just now. He was asked to come and close Govan Shipbuilders in Scotsland Marine.
I worked in Scots Marine when it
closed. You did indeed, yeah.
So
And,
you used to blame for that. I
yeah.
keep that in mind. Before we're going to further about that, tell me a wee bit about Eric. I mean, when we saw Eric in the yard, we saw him for a distance. I mean, he walked the shop floor, but as young lads, I was only in my early 20s, and we kept for distance. When did you first meet him?
I met him in Belfast when I was transferred to the shipbuilding division.
Right.
But Eric had come back. Eric had been at sea and was a qualified chief engineer. And he had he was general manager of the ship repair company, Horn and Wolf Ship Repair Company in Southampton. And he came back to Belfast the post that he was to take was the general manager of all of the ship repair facilities for Horn and Wolf. And, you know, so that's when I first got to know him. And I probably best when he moved to the general manager role in all of ship construction in Horn and Wolf, he took me with him.
What kind of guy was he? Was he
hard, Ralph.
Was he a hard taskmaster, was he?
No, I must say he was. He wasn't.
That must be where you get your grounding from.
It was no soft touch. You know, you delivered or you didn't.
I'd never been, obviously over the years when we worked in the yards together, I was at meetings along with yourself, but I don't think I was ever I'd been at large meetings when Eric was there, but I'd never been in kind of close contact with him, so I didn't really know what kind of guy he was.
He was very charismatic, Ralph, you know, apart from the skill and abilities that he had, you know, across, from engine building to electrical manufacturing to ship construction. he had a really, really great repertoire of knowledge, and he was an exciting man to work for. It was, you got pressured, you got the challenges put in front of you, and you got measured. When if you didn't deliver for him, you were right.
So what was your thoughts when he says, "Come with me, I'm going over to close these yards"?
Well, I had no hesitation in doing that, because what he had done, not in a wrong sense, what he had done, he had guaranteed me that when that was finished,
You would go to the other
that
job.
I would get the job back in ship repair. So we went to, he went up to Govan. Scots and Marine was closed.
Yeah.
And
That must have been about, because it closed in 79, I think.
that's correct.
Because I'd only had months left in my time, and
that's
the crowd
correct.
just had to go. We had to go to Yarrows to finish our time.
That's correct. We brought everyone, integrated the Scots and Marine workforce with the Govan workforce. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there was about 4,000 people at risk of losing their jobs at
Well,
that
at
time.
least. I'm
Yeah.
sure Scotstoun, leading up to 78, 79, had four figures. It had about 1,000 or 1,200 in it, and it was
Yeah.
only a small yard.
Yeah.
But it was very, very overpopulated. But they brought out the redundancies, and a lot of guys went voluntarily. And I think only a handful went over to Govan, and then they closed the place.
What I couldn't come to grips with, Ralph, and I think I've said to you previously, that Glasgow was the second city of the empire, and the Clyde did for the UK economy, the GDP of the
Yes.
country, what Silicon Valley is doing for the USA today. But that didn't stop Margaret Thatcher from deciding that industry is not the route to the future. Financial services are. So obviously we were on a bit of a tightrope. Now you're asking me about Eric, what Eric was like. Eric was a force of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And what he sought to do, rather than have 4,000 people sitting on their backsides, he and a guy called John Parker, who was managing
Yes.
director of British Shipbuilders, they sought put some pressure on P&O to bring the Bay class container ships to Govan.
Yeah.
You'll remember them.
Yes.
For re-engineering and the extension of the sail guides from 20 foot to 40 foot. And those two ships came to Govan, but the subsidy or the support for it went to the owner, not to Govan.
Right.
So Govan bid for those two and had to deliver on their price. Otherwise, there would have been
No future.
mayhem. Now, thanks to people like Gus Stevenson and Davy Rogers,
Yeah.
it went tickety-boo, and things went well. And and Kincaid.
You mentioned Davy there. I very rarely, I never really heard Davy speak much, but I can honestly say I never heard him raise his voice.
Yeah.
Davy just scurried about and done his work.
Yeah, Davy didn't say much, but he did a whole
Oh,
lot.
he did. Yes, he's actually
that
smart.
was-
But you very rarely, when you sat in conversation, when we used to go to social nights,
Yeah.
he very rarely opened his mouth.
Yeah. So, we were grateful for that it went so well. And on that basis, given the energy that Eric and John Parker put in, another contract came along, but this time for 2 Cardiff-class bulk carriers, which was a Govan design. The condition that we got those was that if we missed a financial or delivery milestone,
That was it.
the company was to close. No. And I can tell you, it went exceptionally well, and we delivered both ships on time.
It
at the
must
price.
have been difficult because if that's you in the early 80s, now you think back 10 years prior to that, they had the UCS sitting, which was a big success union-wise, and everybody had the drumbeat that they thought were going to be all these orders, and then, as you say, the government came in and changed that way of kind of thinking.
Sledgehammer.
And I expected
Sledgehammer.
the unions to be more forceful and not accepting any sort of snash. But for to hit every milestone or not to miss a milestone, you must have had a decent relationship with the unions.
It did. I'll tell you, Ralph, in my early days, I was making my way down to the basin, the wet basin, and a guy turned the corner and a big blue Crombie, and it was Jim Early.
Oh, all right.
And we greeted each other and got to chat. And I understood his position in the UCS period. And I think he understood my position because he said to me, do you have the male body parts to manage this bunch of shop
He's
stewards?
being polite.
And I said, well, I'll give it a go.
Huh?
Now, when I looked at that group, that senior shop steward committee, Sammy Gilmer,
Yeah.
Sammy Barr, Davy
Sammy
Cooper,
was at Scotstoun, yeah.
Davy Cooper, Stan McNee, Davy Torrance, and John O'Neill, I think even Pat Joyce at the
Joyce,
time.
yeah.
And they were really, really, you know.
So they were on
good.
side with it?
Well, there was no aggression, there was no confrontation. It was, we're in trouble here,
Let's
and the
get it
only way
together,
of getting out of it, how can we help you? You know,
That was
and
good.
it was very, you know, really, really good. And what I noticed as well, I must give credit to them, they had peppered their organisation with young people like Jamie Webster and Mick Giblin, you know, who really, really...
They had a reserve team sitting on a bench.
Correct, that's correct. So, you know, my role had changed, and what was being asked of me was, how can we commercialise the yard, you know, without the need for support from government.
But we obviously needed investment because if I remember rightly, there wasn't, I mean, machinery was outdated,
Yeah.
the craneage was falling to bits. So we must have needed a bit of investment.
Ralph, my feedback, you know, we were still at risk of getting getting closed. My feedback to Eric was that the yard hadn't had a penny spent on it in decades, and I asked Bill Allen to show me around, and afterwards I wondered how he could keep the lights on, you know, because it was so.
Bill was another man that was. I think he lived and slept in it, and every time you seen him at the weekends or late on at night, he was always climbing about doing things.
Oh, he was great. He was really, really good. You know, great support for me. So my advice to Eric was that there was no assets that were going to be transferred out of Glasgow to Weir's, to the Tyne or to Camelaird. But I did say to him, the greatest strength in that company were the people. No, and I'd met Alan Sinclair, Roy Stephen, Charlie Mitchell. You know,
Charlie's still on a go.
I made a point of not missing anybody that I felt, you know, was right to engage with, and I came back to Eric with a view that the greatest asset of the company were the people, and that if the company were to be commercialised, then it would need the investment that you're talking about. So we set about, you know, doing that in terms of the equipment and tooling, upgrading to plasma burning.
Did the government hand out the money? Were they quite readily to hand it out? Because they had that instigation. They wanted to close the place. You normally get more so, and I'm not political, when it's Maggie Thatcher.
If you didn't defend the payback for it, the British shipbuilders, you wouldn't have got it. But what had happened through the Bay-class container ships, the 2 Cardiff-class ships, all of a sudden Govan was a little bit more popular in British shipbuilders' plan, to rid themselves of...
Proved it. And as I say, I speak to the younger guys. I go and speak to the guys in the academy, and because they're only in their early 20s, maybe, they can't fathom out how sparse the conditions were back then. You were trying to build to a programme when it's pissing the rain and snowing and blowing a hoolie, and you were putting units up piece by piece, like a 500-piece jigsaw. Nowadays, the young ones see it all getting built under cover, under heated conditions. So try to explain to them, they look at you as if that couldn't happen. So it must have been 10 times more difficult.
Well, British shipbuilders weren't going to be financed by Downing Street or Westminster, so you had to fight for every penny. One of the best improvements that we made was to deploy semi-automatic welding. Yeah. Prior to that period, it was...
I was just stick welding, it was on manual,
general purpose and low hydrogen rods and whatever else. And also, we made an investment in the pipe shop. Charlie Mitchell had more data on pipes than the Mitchell Library had books.
That's what he calls his own library, the Mitchell
Library.
And
I'll tell you, I went up and saw it, and every drawer he opened, there was data. And it was fabulous.
I worked in Charlie's office when I was with QC, and he had all these folders lying for different contracts, and he had one that said, can't I say, I mean, if it said errors or mistakes or rework, and I opened it, And I says, there's nothing in it. He goes, that reminds me how to
That's
do
it,
my
yeah,
job.
yeah.
And it was to keep him on his
Well-
himself on his toes.
Well, I think we installed. We did install 2 large NC
Yes.
pipe benders, but also it was the process flow from a silo of the pipes so it was it really. Charlie could have produced, I think, 1,000 pipes a week
Yes.
with with his energy, his workforce, and a little bit of help.
Peter, I always made that when I worked at Peter Maguire Bill, and Peter was a manager.
That's correct.
Who was
That's correct.
NAD foreman Bill.
I remember him always standing at the door of the shop when
Yes.
I was approaching, and I think the idea was for
He'd
him.
run up and tell you were coming. I think we all had people spying out for that.
No, but it was really a great investment, because another thing, British Shipbuilders were going to nominate Govan as the sole supplier of all pipes across all of the shipyards.
All right.
That so was
Sums
again
up how far we went, yeah.
Because after the
The manipulators, and I remember the first time I ever saw any pipe manipulators.
that's
was in
right,
that pipe shop,
rotational welding, yeah.
rather than rotating the pipes.
But Charlie was a guy that you could hand any technology over to, and he'd make something of.
When
he
we
was
met him a
just-
couple of
yeah.
weeks back, he still does the same thing. He goes into his wallet and he brings out a small paper
Yep,
tab off his payslip,
yep.
and it's for way back in the 50s. And he'd done 80 odd hours, and I can't remember the money he got, but it was a fortune back then. But he says that was a normal week for me. It was 85 hours. Nowadays,
Oh.
you get
No,
100
it's
on the squatter
something.
for that.
But there were, Charlie was probably a little bit special, but there were a whole lot of good guys,
I'm trying to think who else would be about at that time in the early 80s. As you said, Alan Sinclair.
Alec Benny, Alec McNichol.
I said to you before, Alec Benny was one of the most laid-back guys.
A lovely guy.
I remember when I was in the young days as a foreman, we were doing in a dry dock in Govan,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a quiet Sunday, and me and Willie Robertson and Jimmy Ray, and we were kind of wandering about, and they had this, it was like a policeman's baton that hung in at the side of the forecastle. I didn't know when you pulled it out, it let off a flare.
Yeah.
So Willie Robertson pulls one out, and nothing happens, and he hit me with it.
Robbo, I know.
So I pulls the other one out to get him back, and it was attached to this, and this flare goes up in the air, and it landed in the water, and it started bubbling up.
Yep,
So I shit myself. I said, what's going to happen? So I'm doing, and Alex standing with a cup of tea, and he goes, what happened, son? I said, I leaned against it, and it fell. I had to pull it out about 18 inches.
Yeah.
I said, I leaned against it, and it fell. And
Well-
he says, well, I better go and phone, stop.
Yeah.
People coming. No, it was coming. I didn't know it was attached to a satellite.
That's correct.
And there was ships. I shit myself.
G-
There was ships
GP
coming. There was
GPS,
fire brigade coming.
GPS.
But he just stood there and he went,
Yeah.
hope you've done a lot of overtime, son. You need to pay for that, which
Do
I
you,
didn't. Right?
do you know, Ralph, when I saw you put Alec Benny on the
Aye, on the page.
website, I thought you couldn't have done anything better.
I said that earlier on. My plan was long before podcasts were invented. I'm talking about back 6, 7, 8 years ago when these were in their infancy. And I wanted to sit down with him. And his granddaughter was on the Facebook page, and I had conversations with her, and I said, could I go to his house and sit and just put my phone on and just ask him something about what we're doing today, about his life in the years, because he had a wealth of knowledge and he'd been there for.
Yeah, you couldn't buy it.
And just at that time, COVID was starting to come, and his wife sadly took no well and passed away. And then Alec took COVID and ended up. So I never got the opportunity in it. And I'm saying, well, he did. He knew everything. Him and his partner in crime, Alec McNichol, they just sauntered on and done their work.
If I had the authority, the management process was in silos of machinery installation,
Steel and outfit
and steel, and there was no real connectivity there. And what I should have done, rather than have them run about as ship managers, I should have had them run about as project managers with total authority from design through to delivery and beyond delivery, in the guarantee period for each of the ships that they were.
I think that was
to.
a bit of a drawback then. Yeah, they had kind of
That's
barriers.
right.
I'd done my bit, and then it went to
That's
you.
correct.
You really need an integration there.
Yeah. So, but what then developed out of the Cardiff class ships, we went to El Conqueror.
Yeah.
And from El Conqueror, I think it was Lakeness, Lofness.
Yeah.
For a Norwegian owner, the Pacific Peace, the Pacific Patriot, the Sir John Fisher,
I worked in Sir John Fisher.
the
Yeah.
Lakers, the Saskatchewan Pioneer,
Pioneer.
the Canada Marquis, and the Selkirk Settler, and then 3 Lord Citron, Lord
Byron.
Charles Parson, and
Byron. Yeah.
for the coal, the Central Electricity Board. Now that was all done in the period of 1980.
I think I looked up when we were doing some research a couple of weeks back, and I think I says to you, there was maybe something like 11 or 12 or 13 ships in that period. And I looked at when you can go into a database for the Clyde, when they were built and when they were scrapped.
Yes.
And the average age of those ships that you just mentioned there ran into 15, 16 years. And the one which we'll go into later on, which was with Canice and the Cape Fruit, the North Sea lasted nearly 40 years.
Yes, it did. Yeah,
which is
only recently has it gone to
2025 event.
Gone to the breakers.
Yeah. It got launched in '86 and it went scrapped. And it had 2 or 3 owners, but just try to get your head around about that for when you go and buy a car now, it lasts a couple of years. These ships, an average, I think it was about 15 or 16 years over at sea.
But if you consider, Ralph, how productive that period was, it was better.
Basically one a year, yeah.
But for me, it was it was better than keeping people at work than having them on the brew.
Yes.
And so it was great that it was this really, really productive period in the company. And then along came the famous North Sea. Now, there had been no studies done by British Shipbuilders nominated Govan. We had got popular. We were all of those ships.
So they nominated. I thought we put our hand up and said
all
we
of those
can build
ships.
it.
All of those ships were delivered on time.
Yeah.
And so the reputation had grown. British Shipbuilders nominated us as their passenger ship builder for the future. But there was no study, so I was taken aback a little, because normally with a decision like that, you're going to build these to cruise standards.
But
the North Sea.
It was like going for building a kind of doing minis to building a Rolls Royce. It was completely chalk and cheese for what we were used to. When we had an engine room, you had a bow and you kind of holes in between. This was something completely different.
No, but we didn't have the expertise for to cover the public room. So what happened? The owners' representatives gave Govan a list of potential contractors.
Subcontractors.
So they to all intents and purposes, the owner got what he wanted, and we ended up paying for it. For in the meantime.
Just even think the amount of, you mentioned it before, the amount of subcontractors that must have been involved. That must have been.
It was
hundreds.
It was, and we weren't prepared. But nevertheless, we're not going to turn our nose down.
Not at all. No,
what we had done, what other investment we had made in the meantime was with Wärtsilä in Finland.
Yes,
we went to their facility, the cabin module facility in Helsinki.
I was in Finland, yeah,
and got the couple of groups of the guys got trained there, and so we had the license for all of the cabin modules. In the United Kingdom, not just in shipbuilding, but in hotel. All
right. Because that was the way of the future, rather than building it.
It was.
It was a plug and play. You bolted it down or welded it down and plugged it in.
You would know how demarcated our industry was, but that cabin module license afforded us the opportunity to have total interchangeability, and people like Sid Boyle. And people like
I was going to say that because that was you bringing a demarcation.
And Pat Joyce, they all of those guys were trained in each and every workstation. It was a process flow of the cabin and of the wet space, and the combination of the two. And all of those guys were totally interchangeable. And it was quite a breakthrough.
That was a breakthrough because it was always single trades. Yeah,
it paid dividend on the North Sea because the North Sea was designed to cruise standard, cruise ship standard, for 1,250 passengers, 850 saloon cars.
That's right.
The engine room, there were 4 Merleys diesel medium speed driving 2 shafts to 2 CP propellers, and the rest. The amount of space that was afforded to that machinery space was a shock. When you consider the accommodation, the public rooms, the navigation, the car decks, which had
had the
intermediate
floating deck,
landings.
yeah, that's right.
There was, so that machinery space was not afforded, in my opinion, not afforded anything like the cubic capacity that it should have had.
But the owners would have been wanting more. The
You
more
went
bodies
into
they've
it,
got, the more money they make.
you went into it was easy for me to walk around it in a morning or an afternoon, with difficulty. And I'm not saying easy, but to work in it and install pipes and pumps and valves and disc boards and switchboards and whatever, it was a really major challenge, because the air, it wasn't air conditioned when you were doing that.
But there was
they weren't working.
There was thousands of bodies on it.
That's correct. But up in the that was inevitable. But the critical path on that ship was the electrical installation. From the switchboards to disc boards to junction boxes to devices for duty-free casinos,
discotheques,
nightclubs, restaurants, lounges. So we had at that time we had about 20 or 30 electricians working. Maybe that's a bit light, but no more than 40, and we needed probably about 200.
Probably 10,
right. So, but nevertheless, we for all that we overcame most of the difficulties, except getting the ship through a sea trial. Now, I relate that machinery space as a source of many problems for temperatures and pressures and alarms that were going to go off during an endurance run. And they did. The other one was the constraint that the DTI put on the fire doors.
Yes.
And we unfortunately had a surveyor who was not pro-Govan, who was sticking his credit card in the gap. And if there was a thou difference, he failed.
He was signing them off.
And we actually had to sail that ship out of Glasgow without a passenger certificate to Hull. And people like John Young carried that job off fabulously. You couldn't have thanked the guy and his team like that anymore.
As I said, I was speaking to John Young a couple of months back when he came into the yard when they were laying the ashes for Jim Craig, and he was there, and he still looks as what he did. I think I'd seen him 30, 35 years ago, and he still looks the same. John Young.
Incredible. The other, I can, there are things that always stick with me. I like the thought with the conveners having peppered their organisation with young people. The technical director, Jimmy Shand, had a fabulous team in design, and the supply chain, the likes of Alistair Morton. They don't grow people like him anymore. But what Jimmy did, Jimmy had peppered his organisation with people like John McNeil, who went on to become the production director.
Yeah, I remember John well.
When I was made deputy managing director. Jim Lockridge, meantime, had built, British Shipbuilders had recognised his ability, and they had decided that there would be a CADAM Centre of Excellence again at Govan. So all of a sudden we were doing not too badly, and the likes of Alan Britton could, in design and estimating, there was none better. Now, that ship really tested everybody. It certainly it certainly tested me, but we kept it out of Govan. It went on one or two sea trials. We came back to the tail of the bank and stayed there. Didn't go up the river, and people would ask me about the ship was for P&O and Nedloyd. Nedloyd were the Dutch wing of that company, and their superintendent was a guy called Albert Tuconis, and he once told me, if you take this ship out, don't take it back up to the shipyard. And I said, why not? He said, the Three Keys Marine, I think it was Three Keys Marine, don't want to raise a scandal or anything. They had a plan to take the ship out of Govan, to finish it in a European, I think it was actually a French facility. And Albert Tuconis told me, don't take it up there. If you take it up there, they'll make a charge for...
What do you mean, finish it? Commission it?
No, I think that taking it alongside, they could have claimed ownership on failure that didn't exist. So I never took it back to Govan. We went once it had got once it had left Greenock, tail of the bank, it went to Hull, or went and a couple of sea trials,
Yeah,
and then to Hull. But they had a plan to take it away from our shipyard. That P&O consultant.
I mean, I thought
was the
and I
P&O
know
consultancy.
when you look at the dates, when I went onto the website and had a look at the dates for the Clyde database, and I think well, it doesn't say when you started laying the keel, but the day it was launched to the day we let it go was only a matter of, I think it was just around about 2 years.
That's correct. I don't think don't think as long as that.
And it seems as. But nowadays, the ships that they're building nowadays are more sophisticated, there's more equipment and more technology in them, so they take longer. Yeah. As I said earlier, back then you had an engine room, you had your bow, whatever was in between, whether it was holds or whatever. So they were just repetitive units to get you there. Nowadays it's more sophisticated. But when I look back and I said that was like going from building a Mini to a Rolls Royce without having any previous experience.
But on the other hand, what we did over the period, Ralph, of coming out of the past where no money had been spent, there was always. Now, Eric was always keen to make sure that if it can be improved,
make it better.
The payback's there, let's do it. And we did it with the investments that I've given account to you. But I think from me, when the 2 Costco container ships arrived, that became, a much more relaxed environment.
I remember when the Chinese came in. I was a supervisor at the time, and we worked and we spoke about it.
Well, they brought a team.
Mr. Wu, I worked with
Mr.
Mr. Wu.
That's correct. They brought a team of about 11 or 12 people, and they were all super qualified,
very well qualified.
and very helpful. Not the contentious. Not there was no confrontation with them.
They kind of kept themselves. They were that kind of people. They kept themselves to themselves. They used to come into our office and he'd come in with his long johns on.
Yeah.
In the winter, and it was like somebody at a cartoon. You unbuttoned it at the arse when they wanted to go to the toilet, and it said Costco. But they were very, very clever.
There was the Lord Mayor of Glasgow. I forget his name at the time. The city chambers that gave them two houses.
That's right. Clyde Bank.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I remember going down there a couple of times. They took my wife and kids down, and give them a bit of a treat. But there was one treat that I didn't welcome. The Captain Bow was the leader of that group.
Yeah.
And amongst them was Chairman Mau's nephew. That was the big guy. I think he was a mechanical engineer. But I would go each morning. I had to go. Captain Bow would demand that I come and have a cup of tea with him at 9 o'clock every morning. And I go in, and he's boiling a kettle, and he pours a boiling water in the cup. And I'm waiting, and then I don't know what it was, but it was like twigs, little miniature twigs on top of the water. And they lay there while he put me to the test.
You had to drink it?
No. But just while that was, settling, he was challenging me.
Asking you 101 questions.
And that he knew the answer to. And I don't remember him ever asking me an answer or asking me a question that he didn't know the answer to. But I would get up after the cup of tea, and he would say, Gallagher, please sit down. And he would put more water in, and I couldn't get away from him until all of those settled to the bottom of the cup, and that I drank it. Now, it was a lesson for me, a real lesson for me to be engaged. The guy was so senior and knew everything that was going on through the lads bringing it. He probably had a conference with them when he got home to Clyde.
So you had all the answers.
So, you knew you were on a
What I did find about him, I'm not a political person, the Tiananmen Square carry-on was going on, and we would kind of engage with these guys, see what's happening, and we can't speak. And we found out, we speak to some of the commissioning guys that dealt with them a lot, that they were taken to the house in Clyde Bank by a minibus, one of your drivers. They had food delivered, or raw materials delivered. They were allowed a phone call. It sounds very draconian, but it wasn't. It was just the way they were. And I remember speaking to Mr. Wu one day, and I said to him, what is he doing? And he rang off all his calls and what he'd done. I said, why don't you come to Europe and make yourself some money? And he didn't say it through fear. He says, my company owned me. And I said, what do you mean? He says they give me a
The
house.
family.
They put my family to school. They give me clothing vouchers. They give me food vouchers, and they give me a small salary. He says if I leave, I need to ask them, can I go? And I'm saying that just shows you the difference between the East and the West at that time.
Now, just in case that didn't come about, Ralph, one of them was actually the state Secret Service.
Oh,
he was there to make sure none of them jumped the fence.
Well, that goes to show you. I was the same when I was in Russia. We had people in our office, but they were qualified. They weren't just in as a plant. And we used to look about the office and go, they had people that were, there's old KGB, I don't know call that now, but they were in the office to make sure that you weren't sending, well, in those days there wasn't emails. Nowadays there is. Back then it would only be word of mouth and paper trail and telephone calls because there was no emails then.
Well, I finished on the with British Shipbuilders on those container ships. I was paid for by them.
Yeah.
But I moved on to the initially to the board of Govan, but that I wasn't going to sit in a boardroom where Norwegian was.
How did you find them? You probably find them the same as I'm going to say.
No, I didn't find them at all welcoming.
I think we found out as time went on.
I found a bit of arrogance.
Yes.
But what I did do, I'd known Steiner Dragabo years before, and Steiner Dragabo and I got on really, really well.
I think he was one of the few that was quite approachable.
He was the only
We had
one.
a guy in quality called Leif Norbo who was very approachable as well.
Yeah.
But no, the first thing I caught on about it when you went to any meetings with them, they called you by your second name. And that was just their trait.
That's right, yeah.
Because I was there, Archie Patterson was in the meeting.
That's right.
And Archie can speak up for himself. And I heard the guy going, Patterson. Yeah. And I'm going, well, Archie's going to lose a plot here. But Archie just stood up and I said, what was that? He said, that's their management trait. They call you by your second name, which we find derogatory.
Archie Patterson was one of those young guys that Jimmy Shan
brought through the ranks. He's not a young guy now, by the way, Archie.
Oh, well, he went into project management, I think. Initially,
he went into Barrow because you come back from Barrow and into project was when I was in QC.
Good lad, brilliant lad,
He was in not long ago there. He came in to do a kind of study, him and Andy Hamilton and a few other guys, just to have a look about the yard to see. They come in, it's just to give it a fresh look.
We've spent a bit of time there talking, and without mentioning Eric Mackey, it wouldn't have happened without Eric Mackey. The survival of the company. Now Eric retired himself when Govan took the company, but the efforts that he put in there, marketing around.
See, the people down on the shop floor and out the street don't see that.
They also spend an awful lot of time, telling me how it should be done,
keeping you on your toes.
And he would always put that brown duster coat on.
That's right.
And I thought
he always wore that. When
he would go round in the morning, round in the afternoon, have a wee look, engage with people, But what he did. He was Mr. Good Guy, and I was
Mr.
Mr.
Good cop, bad cop.
You better believe it. He planned it that way.
You've heard everybody say, "There's that bastard Bill coming."
No, but I might have been hard, but and maybe I was unfair on occasions.
I think.
But by the same token, Ralph, I needed to hold the standard.
Yes, I was going to say that,
and not just for the employees, but for their families.
Yeah,
and for the company. For the.
I think management styles and management traits have changed over the years.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say now that I'm back in the yard, I left for 12 years and come back again. It's completely went 360.
You can honestly say I'd be sectioned today.
I should have been sacked. But it's just the way it is now. I know it's environment, and I've never agreed with bullying. And I never say, I don't mean you're a bully, but when you shout at people nowadays, sometimes you've got to shout at somebody to get them to do their job, and it's regarded as bullying. And you're going, how did we survive for years?
Yeah.
I mean, I went in there as a young lad and everybody shouted at you.
Well, I remember you as a young foreman standing at the top of the
was that the day you bagged me twice, was
it? And what would happen, the subcontractors on the North Sea were first to come to that opening in the Shell side and get down the gangway. And I shouted up to you. and then I sacked you.
That's right.
Twice. You're sacked.
Well, I need to get a lawyer now because you've said it on tape.
And then I think on the next Sunday I came in, I saw you, and I said, I thought I sacked you.
I said twice you went, I must have been in a good mood.
But I knew that Joe Donnelly would have guided me through that kind of thing.
Never went any further. I went up the stairs that day panicking, and I said to Jim Malloch, and I went, I've just been sacked by Billy. He went, Just leave
Ralph,
it. He does it every week.
I was the last port of call on that disciplinary process where you could have the final appeal was with me. Now, for all the rumours and this, I don't think I sacked.
Nah.
I have no memory of sacking anybody. What may have happened, I may have been told this guy can't stay in the company. I would have been given that information without looking for it.
Yeah.
You know. So, but on the other hand, I'm happy. I'm happy with me.
I don't think. I mean, I can honestly say, obviously, when you left, we had the tea break incident with that was Caverna. I think in my time in there, that was a waste of. That was a kind of main kind of fight that the unions had. Apart from that, in all my time, which is not almost 50 years, but give or take, I never seen a lot of disputes. I mean, you had the odd one and it was over something stupid, but it would never go on for weeks. No. It'd go on for a couple of days, and there'd be a ban in overtime.
Eric Mackey would never have contemplated buying a tea break out. No. Eric Mackey would have rather people spend. He would have created an atmosphere where people would spend 10 minutes at a tea break and get themselves back to the job.
I felt sorry. Bobby Gordon got dragged in it because he was HR at the time. And everybody said the same thing. They had no problem with them getting you to take your tea elsewhere, but there was no facilities to wash your hands, and they were going to stick the odd tea on there. But there was nothing
today there's a 5-star restaurant in there.
Yeah, we've got air fryers and what have you.
But the menu, it's a la carte.
It's a la canteen now. But and the amenities now, the guys have got the televisions are up, and they've got the hand creams and what have you. In our day, you were lucky if you had toilet paper and anything else.
For all the skill and all the good skills that were there were good people, and they also were. There was humour as well. For all the hard times and good times, there was always a ripple of humour.
Yeah.
And you are so typify that, bringing a bit of levity to a day at work in those circumstances. And you got to be really respected for what you've done in that way, and with the app that brings so many fond memories back to people like me.
The good thing about that was, when I went to work abroad, because I didn't speak language, I didn't really know anybody, I was looking for something to do, and I put the page on just to keep in touch with guys, because I still keep in touch with guys who I served my time with, who've left the yards, and we still have the odd day out, and we have a phone, or you kind of send a message. And I thought this will last a couple of weeks, and a few people will send messages, but it's grown, and sadly a lot of it now is you're informing, which is good in a way. You're informing people that when somebody sadly passes away, because it allows people to go and pay their respects to those people. Because if you're not in the yard anymore, i.e. like when Roy Stevens went and Hughie Watt and people like that, if the Facebook page wasn't there, you may be saying months later, how's Hughie going? Oh, he passed away. Yeah. So it gave us an avenue that way. But again, it allows people to interact. And there's been a surge of people in the last maybe 3 or 4 months coming on. Because we're starting to, I get involved with the Fairfield Club, try to keep them open, because you're trying to keep things that I know it's no tradition, but you're keeping people in that loop, if you want. Yeah. And I mean, I know I can't say too much now about the modern stuff, because obviously I work at, I still work for BA Systems. Yeah. But I'd like to think that in the early days when I was there, we would go and pull for all the schools and bring in all the young kids. Yeah. Just drag them out and say, who do you know what's the yard? My granddad's in there, my dad, my sister, my brother, and we would bring them in and they'd get an aptitude test. But unfortunately, in the modern day, they've raised the bar. Yeah, wrongly. Which is good to an extent. I can say yes. Yeah. But when you bring these people in who are highly qualified mentally, they don't want to stay in the shop floor.
But Ralph, in raising the intellectual level, that's merit, has its merits.
Yes.
But what they've forgotten the non-academic who's in a secondary school, who has more practical skill, ability, or
people who can wire a plug up and fit 2 pipes together,
filling the place with graduates, and the graduate will only use the company for a couple of years before moving on to something better or something else.
I remember we brought in 20 odd, maybe 25 graduates way back in the early 90s, and I think there's 2 or 3 of them still left.
Yeah. No, but that tells it all. And why is that? Because someone, it's mismatched. Well, anyway, won't go there.
It's a discussion, because we, at this moment in time, shipbuilding now has got a resurgence because of the contracts that's on the go. So there is a demand for people. There is a demand for skill. Yeah. Whereas in the past, when you were going through the 80s and 90s, you were stumbling with a contract and we'd all sit when we get told, oh, you've got this boat. How long is that going to last? 2 years. So you could then say, well, I can book a holiday or change my car because you had a 2-year window where you knew you'd have work and maybe a wee bit overtime in it. We're now sitting at where we have maybe 20 years work in front of us.
Yeah.
And the pay in there is quite good, but trying to bring people in is difficult. A lot of people don't want to come in the yards.
But back to your point about where they set the bar, that's for me, that's the problem. They've gone over the top in terms of, freedoms that they afford. And my thoughts anyway are that in Scotland, many kids go to university.
Yes.
But they're going to university to spend their time on degrees that, in my opinion, some of them, and quite a number of them, they're not really worth anything in a future.
Yes.
The only degrees that should be financed should be tech degrees.
Yes, you're going to use in that
That's
industry.
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. No, and that's fine that they're paid for by the state or by the company. But when there's a whole barrage of other people, that are going to come into the industry but not stay or not have any impact, then I go back to, because I didn't go to university.
Yeah, neither did I.
Yeah, I went to the College of Technology to study naval architecture, but it's leaving behind a bunch of guys and a bunch of families that have the potential, and it's not being measured. You could collect data that would qualify a kid that comes for an interview. And if he fits that bill, not the degree level of A star or A's or B's or whatever, just more practical skills.
It used to be when I was a supervisor and you get a lot of apprentices come in and say, what's your name? And they'd say Joe Bloggs, and you go, is your dad in here or your uncle's in here? We've not got that now.
Yeah.
There used to be generation after generation, and there's gaps missing because a lot of family, all right, the yard ran down about, but when it picked up again, the people went elsewhere or they didn't meet the criteria to get in, which is...
Ralph, I think that if we're building British warships, we should have British people doing it.
It's just a struggle to get people.
No, but really, somebody needs to get a grip of that. Really, there must be somebody out there that can put their arms around HR and redirect them to a better outcome.
But we need, as I say,
those ships will not be delivered by the graduates.
No.
They'll be delivered by the people
who are actually on the shop floor,
who've got a pair of hands and a brain.
I mean, as I say, you came in, when was it, about 8-9 months ago? You came in with Roger and Al Nicholson.
I did.
And you had the pleasure of seeing it. I mean, the Janet Harvey Hall is one of the biggest facilities in Europe.
Must say, Ralph, I must say, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was no leadership and there was no atmosphere. It looked as if people had been, sort of browbeaten or something.
I don't know if there's a lot of legislation.
But
changed.
there was
place is very quiet when I'm in. I mean, you always hear people hammering and moving stuff about machinery. It seems very, very quiet. I don't know if it's a build process.
I think a big problem would be that with this series, what they should be doing is creating a network of about maybe 60, 70,000 activities, highbrow, and then a detailed plan that falls down from that with the critical paths, and then the resource plan. You need to have a resource plan before you start. And I think that there's a whole lot of gaps in their strategic planning and their detailed planning there.
It's difficult. There's a lot of gaps as well. When I used to stand at meetings in the morning and they'd mentioned that somebody would retire in 3 months' time, somebody who'd done a specific job. So even then, they're giving themselves 3 months a window. But that 3 months would go by in the blink of an eye, and that person would leave, and then they were struggling. It's because people either didn't want to do it or they couldn't get the people that were capable. So you would start to go around and try and borrow people from other areas to try and fill gaps. To me, we should have a backlog of people waiting to start in that yard, desperate to start in the yard.
Back to the equipment and tooling. Down there, what I saw, you couldn't ask for better.
Oh, we've got the tools to do the job. We just can't seem to find the people.
So, but why doesn't someone, the problem-solving thing again? Aerospace companies, BAE's an aerospace company, and they'll problem solve at all levels, in every silo, at every level.
I don't think it's for the want of trying. I think there is people looking at this, but for some reason it doesn't seem to be.
They're not trying hard
enough.
We've
got the new academy, which is bringing.
They're not trying hard enough because it works in GE and it works in BAE. So if it works in those corporate majors.
It should
How in
work.
heaven's name can it not in a wee corner of Govan?
I mean, we've got all the equipment and we've got the facilities and we've got the plans and we've got the machinery.
Super. But without,
It's just getting the
without
people.
going off the rails, Ralph, we talked about humour, and I enjoy it. I remember someone, Eric said to me, I think there's a Chris Yule, a lovely man. He was the safety manager
He's the security guy.
and security, and he had identified a money lending racket that was going on the road on a Friday afternoon when people, I think they were paid fortnightly then in cash.
I might have done, aye.
I think in money.
Aye, a brown paper
and
bag.
the
aye.
money lender would be there, sort of delivering the painful blow. And Eric said to me, "You better do,
As if you're going to
you
solve
better
it.
do something about that." So, which I did, but used Chris Yule to solve that, and it did get solved. But in the meantime, the pig,
Aye, Jimmy McCrindle.
McCrindle, and I sent for him, and I said to I sat him down and I said, McCrindle, it's believed that you're at the center of this money lending racket, and he braced himself, and he said, "Listen," he said, "they call me the Polaris burner. I take that many subs from Big Joe Donnelly." and he said, but he was still thinking I was serious. No, and it was, and I thought,
I think I met him once, and I never spoke to him. I met him and I saw him, but there's loads and loads of stories about him.
The heap, and you every day I tell my kids, when they're cleaning the house, he would have brushed everything up into a heap. But
I asked the question weeks back.
He waited for the county council to come and take it.
I asked people weeks back what his name was, and somebody came with his name. I could, Bobby something that him. Give me £1 million, I couldn't tell you his name. Everybody just knew him as a heap. I had a discussion weeks back about that, about nicknames and how people got nicknames and they stuck. And some people wore them as a bit in the pig.
I took my wife and kids to the football match down at Strathammon Park in the summer. And my wife was, our daughter was probably 2 at the time. And all of a sudden, a naked body came running.
That was a wee guy called the Shah. They called him the Shah of Iran for I couldn't tell you. But nowadays, it's you don't get a lot of time for any sort of.
There's another point.
Humour.
Back to the company as it is. It's great that there's still that industry and those people on the Govan Road, and that pleases me. To have been a part of it, but they just need to. Somebody needs to twitch it and get it right in favour of a little bit of levity alongside it as well.
A big difference that I've noticed since I come back in again is in our day, your day back in the 80s and 90s, guys like yourself and Eric Mackey and Bobby Gordon, they would walk the shop floor and you would engage with people.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's the current hierarchy within Govan and Scotland are busy and doing other things, but you never really see them come down. Jerry Deegan comes in, Jerry's up there, but Jerry comes in and has a bit of blather with people. But I think that's missing. And if the people, I think there's a bit of a gap there. And if you could bridge that gap, and some of the kind of top directors come in, and they're now called heads of discipline.
Yes.
And if they started walking about and having a chat with people, I
can understand that if a guy joins the company, joins the industry and is appointed managing director at Govan, but he may be a rear admiral.
Yes.
And a rear admiral won't go to the sailor.
No, he'll go down through the ranks.
So by the time all of those personal skills get to hit the shop floor, it's so. But maybe that's not the case. But I get the impression that and then there'll be people who are in the job for all the right reasons. But it would be nice to think that rear admiral could go and talk to somebody on the shop floor and get us. I didn't trust all that I got told.
No, because
I didn't
people tell you what they want to tell you. That's right. Take it out the door.
And I got as much information from engaging with people than from anybody else.
We mentioned Jim Thompson earlier. And Jim Thompson I got asked to go down to Ferguson's down at Taylor Bank many years ago. Their welding supervisor was off sick, and I said, I'll go down. So I'm working on one of the wee Calmac ferries back in, and I met Jim. I'd known Jim for Scots Marine and in Govan. And Jim used to do it once a week. He'd point people out and he'd go, "Who's that?"
That was
he's
his
a
nature.
painter.
That was his
and he'd
nature.
tell him to take their overalls off and come up my office.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd go, "What's your name and how long have you been in here?" And he'd have a chit chat. But because it was a small yard, it was easier to control. So when he passed that guy the following week, he would say, "All right, Bob. All right, Tom. How you doing?" And the guys felt a couple of foot taller because they felt as if I'm on the same level as a manager. Whereas I think nowadays a lot of managing directors and high up people, maybe they've not got the time for it, but when they walk past you, they don't even nod. There's a lot of people that even nod and say hello, which is civility costs nothing.
I went to Barrow. I came out of Horn and Wolf, retired at 56 years of age, and I spent a couple of months in my garden. And John Parker rang me to go and see Murray Easton. Yeah. And I thought I was going to Barrow for an interview, but it wasn't like that. I went to Barrow to be appointed as the project director.
Oh, all right.
Of Bulwark.
When was this? If you be about 1990 something?
Well, I left at 2003, 2004, around that time. And my feeling is that if not me, the likes of me, certainly the likes of Murray Easton, and I know he's been there, and all of the track record of difficulties that are supposed to. He was
a young director in Yarrows, and
he was, and his father ran the company before him.
Yeah, and he came in.
But I think that if they brought Murray Easton, who has adjusted her to modern day methodology, but still very, very personal. When I went to Barrow, Murray Easton never interfered in a meeting that I was at, but I invited him to sit through the meeting, and he never ever. But what he did,
he took everything in.
Yes, and was able to interact with the IWTs, with the departmental managers, everybody. That is the kind of guy that should be back in the industry. He's probably a little bit too old.
He probably will be, yeah. Because as you know, I don't know if he was there when we brought Ali Begay in. He was well, he said he was Persian, he was Iranian, but I think he's high up in the naval, and he was quite. Yeah. I think he kind of put in a good word for us to get some of the early naval work, but he ruled with fear, and I'm talking about his management feared them. Yeah. And when they went to meetings, I think they told him what he wanted to hear, which doesn't help anybody. If you ask me if I've finished welding the job and I say yes and I've not, all I've done is go to that meeting for 5 minutes without getting my arse kicked. But as soon as you go and walk the job and say it's not, you're getting double the trouble. And he used to, and it wasn't bullying, he just had them to an extent where they wouldn't tell the truth. And that doesn't help, because you start making plans to go to phase 2 when you've not finished phase 1. And I think it lasted about a couple of years, and then he moved on.
I may be oversimplifying, Ralph, but I remember in my early days when I went down to Barrow as project director of Bulwark, I came out of the office and I was walking toward the ship, and there was a young lad walking in front of me, and he had a 5-litre can of paint and a 4-inch roller. And he was walking that fast that I caught up with. So I looked.
The paint is dried.
I looked in the tin, the 5-litre tin, and there was probably a litre in it. And I said to him, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to the well deck." Now, you know what a well deck on an amphibious warship is.
It's massive.
Thousands of square meters.
Massive.
So I said, "Son, do me a favour. Go get your manager." Now, maybe it would have been a time the young boy would have suffered a bit more. But I told him, "Go get your manager." And when the manager, I said, "Get you and the manager come back to the office." And when the manager came, I said, "Don't ever do that again." That's such a standard to set a young boy. I said, the next time I see him, I would like to think he's got a bucket and an airless spray.
He's got a pole with 2 tins on it.
And an airless spray. But crazy. I think today they've lost their way, if I'm honest.
I think, as you say, way back in the 80s and 90s, and the Caverna days really changed things, in my opinion, and they started getting really, really aggressive with things, and they invested a lot of money, but it wasn't their money, it was the government money. They were getting grants, and they did bring a lot of work in, don't get me wrong, they brought in these ships, but they had no intention of staying there, so they had no intention of setting a lot of good guidelines and rules. They got you to tick the boxes, and if BAE hadn't come in, we wouldn't be here. We would have closed.
That's correct.
We would have closed.
That's
because they weren't there for the long term. They were there as subsidy was kind of soaked up, and then they were moving.
But Ralph, in my time with Eric, and back to Eric, he gave me that role, and he said, about assets and their value and where they would finish. and I was able to come back and say to him, people are good. He bought into that, and he backed it up to the hilt, and the company is on the road, largely thanks to his enthusiasm.
He must have. I mean, he must have had a bit of clout. He must have.
But on the other
spoke up for himself.
other hand, what we were trying to do, or what he was inviting me to do, you weren't going to live in a world of subsidy and financial support. You were going to live in a world of commercializing a shipyard and having it capable of performing on a world stage. And what I'm pleased to see, they are there. But it's commercialized. I said to him, it shouldn't be closed. It should be kept open, and it could achieve that, and it can yet. I think Govan could yet climb that facility second to none for the product that they're dealing with. So it's hard to understand why not, but other people maybe they need to bring a different kind of presence to it. Or
it's hard to figure. I mean, they've got all the pieces of the jigsaw there. It's just putting them all together.
Yeah,
it's getting them put together and getting the right people there to do it.
It's the ones that don't cost money that can make money.
Yeah,
that's the engaging with people. And,
when we used to, you had the fab shed and you took stuff outside and you try to erect it in the berth, and it was a job in itself. Then when we built the Espo, a big tank assembly shop, we were going, wow, this is going to make a big difference, which it did. And when they said they were going to fill in the wet basin and make this Janet Harvey, I thought this is a bit of pie in the sky, but you were in it. It's a massive structure.
It's great if we
had the craneage in it, and it helps. And plus, as you know, we can do a lot of the outfit and whatever in there, and most of the stuff's painted before it comes out. So and then they just set it on the barge and take it over into the dry dock. Yeah. So the technology is there and the wherewithals there. I just keep saying, if we could get the people there, the experienced people, and again, but when COVID came, everybody saw everything went quiet. Everybody started working from home, and there was nothing. And sadly, a lot of people lost their lives. But when we come back, a large percentage never came back. I don't know whether they found a better job or they found, I'll go and drive a van or whatever. No, so a lot of people didn't come back.
Yeah.
As I said to you earlier on, we are now getting guys.
Those guys, Ralph, that worked all their lives there, there's a lot of pressure on them. You know, Eric Mackey put pressure on me. I put pressure on everybody else. And those guys won't have had it easy. And they've banked that experience on the back of, working hard and delivering. That's the, so, yeah.
So it takes us down the road now. When we were speaking, and I'm speaking to you about, we've got younger managers and people in it. You gave me a list of guys that was there. Talk me through some of the guys that you had working in there on all sides, from outfit, steelwork, drawn office.
First of all, I think I said to you, the first person that I engaged was Jim Early, because I was pleased with that because he said to me if I needed his help, he would give it.
That alleviates a bit of fear.
He didn't say that freely.
Yeah, no.
I think that the shop steward, the conveners, you couldn't have wanted a better.
Like Sammy Gilmer, Sammy Barn, people like that.
The likes of Bill Allen, who knew the facilities and the tooling, the maintenance regimes, and whatever. None better. Alan Sinclair, Huey Watt,
Big
Archie Miller, Willie
Little,
yes, and Roy Stephen, Gus Stevens, Finlay Sanderson, especially. It's really, really good because Finlay carried the North Sea electrically to a decent end. And John McNeil was really, really good.
Was John in the? He was drawn office, wasn't he?
John was in the.
Was he planning
the engineering machinery installation with Jimmy Johnson design?
Yes.
John was in the design office and probably tinkered with the production engineering side. The drafting and the.
I remember when he came down on the shop floor and then he came into.
But John was very, very different to me. John was.
He's very quiet.
He was, but he also, John.
Not that you were loud, he was very quiet.
But John got, made a good impact. Jim Lockridge, he's dead now, but he built.
He passed away a couple of years back.
And it was it was a new technology, and he managed that himself through to a centre of excellence. and Jimmy Paul, in terms of the Kevin Module facility,
Yes.
went, Jimmy Purvis, the paint
The
cells,
painter guy.
the paint cells.
I remember him, Purvis.
I mentioned Gus Stevenson.
He was a wee poison dwarf, that's what they used to call him. He always had that permanent look about him, as if he was ready to burst into tears.
But I said to you, the Bay class container ships rode on the back of Gus and Davy Rogers, and again electrically with Finlay Sanderson. But the one thing about Finlay, when we did the container ships for Costco, they were a training ship, so they had a deck dedicated to a stand-in crew. And one evening on sea trials I forget which one it was, Finlay put a tape in, and it was on the PA all over the ship, and it was a piper playing.
Oh, all right.
And the Chinese group were totally taken aback by it, but really loved it. And I think we got away with it, some blue murder, because we'd entertained them so well.
I remember when I get invited, I think it was a Thai.
The Thai.
And I get invited to me and my wife get invited to the naming ceremony and down to the tail of the bank for a bite to eat. And my wife was expecting her youngest daughter. And we sat down and we get in first, and we all got off the bus. So other people from Govan got off the bus. And not one of the Chinese had come in. And we were saying, where are they? And somebody came in and said, what they do, they come in hierarchy.
Yes, that's,
So the highest guy came in, then the
Vice Admiral.
And we didn't know that. So once they all come in, we all sat down. So we started, and we were getting something to eat. My wife didn't really know anybody, and she was sitting cutting up, and she cut a potato, nearly killed Big Hughie. It skated across it. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. But no, I went down there, and it was just the way that they worked. Everything they worked, it was their kind of way of working. They were very quiet. You ask them something, they'll give you an answer.
Yes, that's for sure.
Whereas we,
Done better.
Glaswegians, we just sit and we chat away, and if somebody walks in just now, it's another yard. You start talking to them right away, and within minutes there's a conversation struck up. But they were very quiet.
What I also feel, Ralph, at my age now, and I look in and see what's going on. I think that the people down at the tail of the bank, in Port Glasgow and in Greenock, have been stigmatised.
Oh yeah,
unfairly, and I can't contemplate how it will cost.
Reputational damage is more damaging than
£500,000 before the damage to the tourist industry.
Yes,
to build 2 little ferries, dual fuel or not. I can't believe it. But what's regretful is that they were part of what I said earlier about the contribution to the UK economy.
Yes,
doing what. Silicon Valley are doing for the states.
Somebody posted
they shouldn't be carrying that burden.
No.
And somebody in CMAL needs to be held accountable.
Somebody posted a while back and they kind of slated the yards in general.
They did.
I went on, a few other guys done the exact same thing and said, listen, these were design issues, these were kind of managerial issues, these were financial issues. It wasn't a guy on the shop floor. He was building it to the drawings that he had, and then they found out the drawings were only approved by Lloyds. They came for some office in India.
CMAL were given the responsibility to manage the contract.
I don't think they did.
To get the contract and manage it. And they haven't.
No. They've not been held accountable.
Yeah.
So it ended up that they were blaming and the guys who were down there, and it's a small community down there.
It sure is.
When I went down there in 89, I think, and there was maybe about 10 or 12 families that had grannies, grandads, aunties, uncles, and they all worked in the yard. It spread a wee bit. They've got some agency workers as well, because it's rife through the UK that every yard's struggling to get people in. So we've got people.
Andy Burnham has a lot to look forward to, but I think that our industry still has a lot to look forward to. If we could get
very healthy.
If we could get it right and getting the people that go back, a British ship, British people. It's got to have many people. There's 6 million young people.
I know.
Not in employment.
It is all politics, and it's a thing I don't get involved with politics.
Well, you can't.
But I never have. I don't take an interest in it.
Lucky.
But I'm looking for the outside in, and you're saying to yourself, we can see where there's. I mean, sadly, about maybe 15, 16 years ago, we didn't bring in apprentices for 3 or 4 years. We are now seeing the damaging consequences of that, because I think when we get guys who retire now, some are retiring in their early 60s. 60, 61, 62, and the people behind them are in their late 40s into the early 50s. So there's like an 8 or 9 or 10 year gap, age-wise.
Yeah.
And that's all I do is go to guys' retirements and days out. And guys are falling off a cliff, and you're looking to see who's next. There's somebody coming in 3 months' time. And it's, I mean, they've earned it. They've been in 25, 30, 35, 40 years. They've climbed about the yards as welders and platers and painters, wherever they are.
Ralph, the systems and processes are as important, but not any more important than people.
I think the people's important.
If they can get their act together in terms, the repeatability in this program, has massive benefits.
Yes.
That can be, that you can pull into the.
You get lessons learned and just keep going.
You can't go on. One's no better. The next one's no better than the first one.
No.
There was always a standard in my time of a 10% improvement from one ship to the next on the basis of.
I think they do that with the planning hours. I think
the same design. They may be doing it with the planning hours, but they may not be getting the distance between actual hours and standard hours.
Standard hours. I know that's what the difference is.
The problem.
I don't think it's for a lack of trying. I mean, as I say, there is still a lot of old hands, a lot of old planners in there, still a couple of old managers, a couple of old supervisors, drawing office guys. And they're there, I think, just to see their time out. I mean, they're there just to get that. I mean, Jamie Vaughan's there. Jamie's been in planning for, Jamie must be 30 odd years.
Yeah.
His brother worked under Bill Allen, Tommy Vaughan. He's retired. I think Tommy worked under Bill Allen. He took Bill Allen's job and Bill went.
Right.
So these people are passing on. It's a succession plan. They're passing on their knowledge and their experience. And because we had such a gap, there's nobody there to pass it on to.
Yeah.
Or the gap's too big to try and get them to pull that together.
There's a relationship, Ralph, because we've come from full-size lofting to 10-scale lofting to computer-aided design. And Govan also, I just forgot his name. We're blessed to have Billy Motherwell, because Billy Motherwell brought his, and Stan McNee creditably, brought that group together to such that centre of excellence could deliver on what had been assigned to it. Billy Motherwell, typical.
I know the name. I didn't know him. I didn't know.
And Tommy McGinley. I have a soft spot for Tommy McGinley, and a great planner.
He's Sergeant Major.
Great planner. Now, I didn't see him on the shop floor, but I can well imagine.
That's what he was. That was his nickname, Sergeant Major. As I say, I met him. In fact, it was the day David Miller David bought the rights to the Axeman at the Gate film, the one about Eric.
Yeah.
And Eric's grandson, is it Lewis?
Yes, Lewis.
He was there that
day.
Lovely
guy. Yeah.
Jim Craig, God rest him, he was there.
I was there.
And I was sitting speaking I leaned over to speak to Jim. And I says, how's your wee mate getting on? And he popped his head and he was like a wee pug. He goes, I'm fucking here. And I went, oh, fuck, Tam, how you doing? So Tam must be 87, 86, 87, maybe 88, I don't know.
Older than me. I'm 80 in the
you're only a young son compared to him, but he's still, as far as I know, he walks everywhere. He walks all through Renfrew.
Well, Alan Sinclair is reputed to walk all round Bears Den.
I haven't seen him for a while. I know he's still on the go.
I've gone on car tours to see if I can pick him up.
I don't mean, the last I heard, Alan he'd retired obviously, and he started doing his kind of, I wouldn't say handyman. It was a house that was out in the back end of Mulgai, heading into Strathplain, which was originally owned by Sir Hugh Fraser. And somebody bought it, and what they did, they used Alan was maybe tidying things up, doing a bit of gardening. I'm not sure, I think his wife passed away. And what he did is, I don't know if he had a family. Alan was quite...
very introvert.
He didn't tell you much. Man, I'll tell you a quick story about Alan, and it's just because when he came from Mulgai, and everyone, he's a snob, he's from Mulgai, and it was the way he spoke. When he swore politely.
He's from the islands, Big Alan.
Was he?
Aye, pretty certain of
and
it.
He came up into the toilets one day, and everybody was getting washed because he'd walked into the toilets. I was only a young lad then. And this boy, he was rolled his sleeves up and was getting washed. And Alan's staring at him, and he says to him, excuse me, son. He said, you washing your hands or taking a fucking bath? The boy scampered. But he could cut you in two.
Oh, yeah.
He could cut you in two. But he left early. He must have been quite young when he left.
He never tackled me. No, he never. He could have. He had every case to. But he was
never
always,
really saw him lose his temper,
quiet.
but he could cut you in two with a comment. But I think he must have left early.
No, I thought
age-wise, I think he must have.
Yeah.
But no, I saw him up where I stay in Somerset, Maryhill. I saw him, but it was a couple of years back. I'd come out to one of the shops, and I'm sure I seen him, but he was on his own, and he was walking about, and but that was the last I heard he was doing his kind of. But Alan he was a ship manager.
Yes.
Willie Little was a ship manager.
Yeah.
Big Archie was a ship manager.
Yeah.
Trying to think who else you had at the time. Hey, you Jimmy Ray and that below, Big Jeff McLean.
Well, Archie Miller and Hughie Watt and Jim Craig came to help me in Belfast when I went back there. Jim did a stint, but Archie Miller and Hughie Watt, I can say, saved my life. We were in ship repair at the time, and the forepeak of a tanker, and it was heavily 20-year-old, and Archie Miller tied a rope around me, for safety reasons, and they lowered me into the forepeak, and I put my foot on a ladder rung, and it fell, so they pulled me back out, but they thought it was funny. I didn't think it was.
I'm sure there's a few people that say they should have put the rope around your neck.
Well, let me drop.
I'll let you drop.
Yeah, but I think much of that's rumour, Ralph. A lot of that's. Now, of course, I will have crossed somebody's path and in a way that he didn't want, but there weren't many, and unfortunately, people tend to. You've always got terrorists in the organisation.
There always is.
That's it.
As I say, I think back to it. I was young. I was young at the time, so I had to learn quick. And I was learning off a lot of older people like Jim Malik and Ted McClement and John Eagle and Peter Robertson and Johnny Burke, John McIntyre. Yeah. Obviously, the infamous Ed Roby.
Yeah,
he sent me back away instead of going forward.
Yeah.
And I used to work with him. Yeah. And you learn, but you had to learn quick.
Yeah. I have a regret, Ralph, and it's an apology to you, because I had a way of solving that sack you twice.
That was in the same day.
What I should have explained was, the complexity of the North Sea and what we had to put up with from subcontractors wasn't good. And my view was that these are people, that are around the carcass making plenty of money.
They're making more money than we were, yeah.
Weren't entitled to come to a gap in the side shell half an hour or 20 minutes before they were entitled to. So I should have said to you, Ralph, you have the authority. You're a Govan employee. They're not. And that maybe could be a bit of, what's going on down the road there at the minute. But I apologise to you, but I should have explained.
I just went up shaking like a leaf and sat down. I'm in my own mind of nothing I'm saying. Yeah. I'm not saying you were joking, but I'm saying it. And did he mean that, or is it just? And everybody went.
There was a bit of.
It's a Sunday. He's probably been out last night. He's had a couple of beers. No. I can't mind if the Rangers won. I can't mind if the Rangers want to get beaten. I'm saying maybe I've just get the brunt of it.
I'd have been at the end of the bed sweating. How do I get this ship out of here? And my wife saying, "Who else goes to the end of the bed and sweat?" So, but I enjoyed it. It was the best. I must say, the period I spent helping Govan get to where it got to with.
How many years did you do in there?
10, from 80 to 90, 10 years. But it was the best time in my life in there. Now, I come away from it. I worked with a great bunch of people and saw the difference that they could make. And they put the company on a footing that it could compete on the world stage with the right systems, processes,
get the right people, get the right tools,
and tooling. Yeah, and so if it's going off the rails on the Govan Road at the minute, it certainly isn't the equipment and the tooling, and it certainly shouldn't be the systems and processes when you have a repeating design and critical.
I don't think they're going off the rails, but I don't think we're accelerating the way we should, because we've got repeat orders and we've got a workforce there. We've got a lot of agency workers who have embedded themselves in and are happy to be here, and they're working away. So there's and the unions. Nowadays, that's the quietest I've ever known the unions. Everything seems to jog along. There's nothing really.
The best manager, the best manager I ever worked with was Alan Dunn. Alan Dunn came from
Alan and Barrow.
Alan Dunn started his career, went to university in Glasgow.
And I think Alan was a cocker burner. Do you know that? I think he was a cocker burner to trade when he was younger.
And he came to Belfast. He had after a period in Govan. And Alan Dunn made a really big difference in Belfast amongst some very difficult people. and some very difficult circumstances. He has gone to Australia, and what I'm getting round to, back to the Murray Easton. If Murray Easton, people like Murray Easton and Alan Dunn were around there.
Yeah. Because Alan Dunn can't be that old.
No, Alan Dunn's still probably 62 or something like that.
I know he's a
You know,
couple of
that's
years, because he served
yeah.
his time under me, a couple of years behind me.
But Alan Dunn is as good as you could get, and has, you know, is not aggressive. But Alan Dunn, you know, he gets to the point and he guides people.
Yeah.
That's his point. He may offer them the challenge, but he'll walk that journey with them.
Yep.
You know, that's the difference. You know, so I hope that somebody like that, those two people, would come along and help the guy at the top, who's really obviously dedicated to getting it right.
Well, we've got a lot of good people in place there. It's just getting them all to click into gear at the same time.
I think that guy I'm talking about is called Lister.
Simon Lister.
And I worked with
Did you see it was his father?
His father was the chairman of British Shipbuilders
I
at one
didn't
time.
know that.
And a little sidetrack.
Well,
When we did the Bay class container ships, re-engineering, the spin-off was Kincaid got to build the slow-speed diesels for us. The other little thing too in Pui and Taihi, I took those ships to Belfast to dry dock, you know, before the sea trials. And there was a bit of furor in Port Glass, in Scott Lithgow about it. I think the guy, Parker, he arranged a meeting, and Eric sent me down to it. And he was telling me that any ship that passes here from Govan will come into that in-screen dry dock.
We had to get it dry dock.
And I said, I can tell you, you got it wrong.
And
we took quite a number of ships to Belfast, and but what we did, we took our team to Belfast with it. You know, to work on the poppets and stuff like that. And
because it used to be in below the waterline. It used to be the dry dock.
That was the poppets.
Yeah.
But I remember him saying to me, right, after the meeting, I'd left him in no doubt that we'll do what we'll do. He said, do you want a cup of coffee? I said, no, it's too expensive. So you got to, you know, but you could do. I wasn't a loose cannon.
No,
but I wasn't going to be talked down to.
No.
You know,
that seems to be.
And I enjoyed. I can tell you, I enjoyed every minute.
Good. Well, but we've sat here and we've had a right good chat here, and I'm hoping that people that didn't know you or just knew of you will see if the kind of person. I tell people in here that you're still as fervent as you were in the 80s. You're still as passionate.
Yep.
But a lot of people didn't really know you. So hopefully after our chat today,
well, those people are in a job still.
You're not getting started, but we're not taking you back.
No, but they're still in a job, Ralph, and that's what's important.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
And their families.
Yeah.
You know, they may be what they are, but
they're working.
It's still there.
We're working. Thanks very much, Bill. Thank you.
Ralph.